I have seen things in this world that would have made Isaac Newton crawl back into his mother's womb.
I just watched Nosferatu recently, and there were a lot of scenes that had me scratching my head wondering what a diabolical manifestation of evil, disturbances, I just witnessed. This movie left me wondering a lot of things. Like, why did the old naked man bite a bird's head off? How were they able to prepare a funeral service in just one day? How did Nosferatu get on that boat? There's many things this movie isn't exactly clear on, but what I left the theater wondering the most was, who does Ellen truly love? Like and subscribe for more videos. It's obvious from the beginning that Ellen has some sort of a connection to Count Orlok, but it's not very clear how that happens, or why she is the one chosen to have these nightmares and visions. Let me just give you the ultimate premise of the film to refresh your memory on the nitty-gritty details. Ellen is a newlywed who has long struggled with delusions and terrible dreams. When she married Thomas, these issues faded away. However, when Thomas is sent off to Transylvania to secure an estate sale with the mysterious Count Orlok, Ellen knows deep inside that something is very wrong. Later on, Orlok escapes his castle with the intention of making Ellen his own. The vampire brings a terrible plague of rats and the deaths of all those who Ellen loves. Thus, Ellen must make a choice to save the city from Nosferatu. The opening scene shows Ellen letting Orlok take control of her body, and somehow this connected her mind with Count Orlok's mind. So now she can see the future using Orlok's visions that he gives her. We know that these visions stop once she is with Thomas. So does that mean that he is the one she truly loves? Ellen was chosen by Orlok for two reasons. As a young girl, Ellen was lonely and depressed, so she does the one thing that any lonely and depressed girl would do: recite a satanic prayer and summon an old crusty vampire. Orlok obviously does answer her prayer and they become infatuated with each other. I can understand why Orlok would want a piece of that, but how does Ellen fall in love with him? Ellen reveals that Orlok loved her in a way that no one ever has before. She even tells Thomas straight to his face that he can never pleasure her as much as Orlok can. Now, how could she love Thomas and say that right to his face? Ellen's newfound love for Thomas made her vision cease, and for the first time she was able to live a normal life. However, this is what makes Ellen's love triangle so important. Ellen's marriage to Thomas is the biggest reason why Orlok escapes his castle to claim Ellen. Orlok resents Thomas and wants to take Ellen as his own. Meanwhile, Ellen loves Thomas and wants to be with him. Thus, Ellen is thrown in the middle of a fight between Orlok's darkness and Thomas's goodness. In that scene where Thomas and Ellen are kind of going bipolar on each other in the bedroom, it looked as if Ellen was possessed by the darkness of Nosferatu. But she also enjoys it and it seems to satisfy her. Let's go with the argument that Ellen actually loves Orlok more than Thomas. This could be the case since she tells Thomas straight to his face that he can't satisfy her as much as Orlok can. And even though she's kind of being seduced by Orlok's evil, she's still making these choices for herself. She's acting of her own free will. Or is she? To understand Ellen's current conditions, we need to understand all of Orlok's abilities. It is said that Count Orlok has superhuman strength and speed. I know some of these are quite obvious, but it is necessary. Orlok can also transform into a wolf, which is why some of his victims call him a werewolf. He also has telekinesis, which he mainly uses for opening doors and gates, as well as lifting his own body. He does need to drink blood to survive, but unlike Dracula, his victims just die rather than turned into a vampire. Orlok also has the ability to manipulate animals to his will, and obviously has sharp claws and infectious fangs. The one that we need to care about right now though is that he has the ability to control minds and induce madness. Since he does have the ability to control minds, perhaps this is the very reason why Ellen feels so infatuated with Count Orlok. Maybe deep down she doesn't really love him at all, but she is being controlled to believe that she does. Although she did like him enough to bring him in at the beginning, so why would she let him in if she didn't want him in her life? To understand this further, here's the complete backstory of Ellen Hutter. Ellen was born as the only daughter of an upper middle class couple. From a very young age, she was a very sickly child, suffering from epileptic seizures. Her parents raised her with much love, until her mother died and the relationship with her father began to deteriorate until Ellen felt completely alone. One night, while crying, Ellen prayed for a guardian angel, a spirit of comfort, anything, to help her crawl out of the darkest abyss that she had been stuck in. It was then that Count Orlok established a psychic bond with her and began to torment her. The creature made Ellen leave her house and went to the garden of her home, where she did have a vision in which she was attacked by a monstrous being. Ellen's attacks became more severe and intense, while she had horrible nightmares as well. One day her father found her naked outside the house, and thought about taking her to a mental asylum, which Ellen refused. Shortly after, she met Thomas Hutter, and they obviously fell in love and got married soon after. While with Thomas, the attacks and visions ceased. Knowing the backstory of Ellen Hutter does clear up some things. Ellen likely was in love with Count Orlok, although it was an unhealthy and parasitic form of love. Orlok came to Ellen at a time when she was desperate to be cared for. This made her vulnerable and willing to accept love from just about anyone. including a crusty old vampire with a mustache. In this case, Ellen's love was likely real, but it came from manipulation and a moment of weakness. Ellen's love for Orlok was more of a dependency and an interest in his darkness, while her love for Thomas was rooted in reality and genuine care. In the end, she did sacrifice herself for Thomas and the others by letting Orlok lay on top of her naked body and suck the blood out of her chest. Until the sun came up, that is. I feel like there was a very big sexual undertone there, especially since Orlok just died withering away on top of her like that, with her naked body just out in the sunlight. This leads me to believe that she loved both Thomas and Orlok, but in different ways, and for completely different reasons. She dies to save Thomas from Orlok, but at the same time she seems happy that she's dying with Orlok withering away on top of her with his scrawny legs out in the sun. The strangeness of Ellen and Orlok's connection has been confirmed by the movie's director, Robert Eggers. Eggers said, "It was always clear to me that Nosferatu is a demon lover story." He goes on to compare Nosferatu to the classic gothic novel Wuthering Heights. Depp also backed up Eggers' claims.
And then we talked about it a little bit in rehearsal and everything, and it was clear to me from the beginning and from what Rob was saying to me that, like, it's a love story with Count Orlok as much as it is with her husband. There's a real love triangle there.
In this way, Nosferatu knew exactly what they were doing with Ellen and Orlok and embraced this pairing for the creepy and disturbing story that it is. To be honest, I feel like this is a very good film objectively, but it's not something that I'm likely to revisit again. This is the type of movie to watch for the pure love of cinema, and not necessarily for the story. I felt the narrative to be a bit choppy and confusing at times, and there was just too much nakedness. The dialogue, acting, and camera movements I really enjoyed though. So who does Ellen love more, Thomas or Count Orlok? I believe that there was a time when her heart belonged only to Orlok, but when she met Thomas, she really did love him too. And that's why the visions and nightmares went away. However, the nightmares and visions do come back once Thomas leaves, which does mean that Orlok might have been able to manipulate Ellen into loving him again because Thomas wasn't there to protect her. In the end, I believe the twisted form of love towards Orlok is stronger than the love towards Thomas because, like, Orlok is there to manipulate her. Swap your thoughts in the comments below on who you think Ellen loved more in the end. I've swapped my thoughts, and if you want to see my thoughts on the top 5 sci-fi fantasy movies of 2024, then click right up here, and I'll see you on the other side.